Okay, to wash a quilt, I think any quilt that's bigger than a twin size should be done in a bathtub so that you can get enough water around the quilt to thoroughly clean it. And of course, washing machines with the agitator are just gonna, your quilt is just gonna sit in there basically, and the inside's gonna get beaten to death from the agitator. So larger quilts, full, queen, and king, I wash in a bathtub. I use quilt soap, which you can get at quilt supply places, but that's not particularly necessary. The most important thing to remember with the soap is you should dissolve it completely first, because you don't have the agitation of the washing machine to mix the soap. And just don't overdo the soap, because then you just end up with a really tough job of rinsing and rinsing it out of the quilt. So don't overdo the soap. I just basically follow the instructions for the quilt soap. I cleaned my bathtub thoroughly and rinse it well. If you're going to clean it with a commercial, bathtub cleaner, make sure it's rinsed well. Soap goes in. The water is lukewarm. This is a full-size quilt. Just put it in there. And now I have a toilet plunger that I use only for laundry. That helps make this a little bit easier, but you don't need to do that. You can do it with your hands the way I am here. But you just want to make sure that you get enough water around it so that it cleans, evenly. I have quilts that are almost 100 years old, and I like to think that my quilts will still be around for 100 years. And of course, I use my quilts, but I take care of them. I try not to get them dirty. I don't set dirty things on them. We don't have pets. And because the more obviously it's the washing that's hard on a quilt that will age it more than actually using it. So you want to wash as little as possible your quilt. I use my quilts on the bed, but we take them off at night, just like you would maybe take a decorative pillows or something off your bed and put them on the next morning. But like I said, the more you use your quilt, the more you'll have to wash it, and that's okay, but the more you wash it, the more it will wear out. Dryers are the worst thing in the world for quilts, in my opinion. And like I said, I really think you need the amount of water you get in a bathtub to properly wash them. I don't think you can really do that in a washing machine. I don't know much about front-loading machines, but I don't think you're really going to get enough water and enough space. You also, with a handmade quilt that's been quilted by hand, you need to be careful that you don't pull on it when it's wet, because you could break the quilting threads. That's another thing that would worry me about a front-loading washer. When the quilt is wet and it's being flipped around, I'm not sure if the quilting threads would tend to break. So, you don't have to overdo the washing. I wouldn't soak it for half an hour or anything like that, because, soap has its own sort of chemicals and whatever, and you don't want to, unless it's really dirty, you don't have to wash it any longer than like a wash cycle would be on a washing machine. Definitely some dirt coming out of this quilt. But again, you want to just kind of gently smush it around, make sure it gets washed evenly. You don't ever want to take your quilt when it's wet and pull it up out of the water, because that's what could break the quilting threads. So you want to be careful about that. Okay, now I'm going to let the water go. At this point, you could take it to your washing machine and spin the soap and water out and bring it back to rinse, but I usually just kind of let it drain here. See, I'm kind of gently folding it over on itself. And then as the water drains, I'll just kind of push on it to let the water keep draining. Gravity will do a lot of the draining. And then I'll refill the tub, rinse it. I usually rinse twice, doing basically what you just saw me do, but with rinse water. And then I'll show you how I took it out of the tub. So I filled up with cold water to rinse. Kind of gently unfold this. So you can get a good rinse. I usually do this twice because you don't really want to leave soap in the fabric. And you know, a quilt that has not had pets on it, or you know, you avoid kind of getting them dirty, you shouldn't have to wash your quilt more than once a year. This is the final rinse. Now before I take the water, drain the water the last time, I'm thinking about the fact that I'm going to take this to the washing machine and spin it. So I always kind of get it in like a long snake, with the idea that, you know, it's going to go in the washer, you know, like a donut. Because again, you know, you don't want to be pulling and you don't want to be pulling on it when it's really wet. So kind of get it into the shape I want it before I let the water go, while it's still floating and it's easy to move. So you squeeze out as much water as you can. Just let gravity pull the water away. So you should get any waterproof plastic container. I have this little clothes basket that I just put a leaf bag inside. And when this is drained a little bit, I'm going to put it in here and take it to the washing machine and spin it. Really big quilt, like a queen or a king size, you might need 2 people to get it out, because it will be heavy, and you don't want it, again, you don't want to be pulling on it when it's wet, because the weight of the water can break the quilting threads. But this quilt is just a double, so it's not that bad. And again, you want to try, I've got my donut, so that when I get it to the washer, it won't be so hard to get it in there. So I'm folding and just pushing the water out. So I'm going to transfer the quilt into my washing machine. Again, you want to be careful not to pull on it when it's wet. Now if I have a quilt smaller than a double, like a twin or a crib or a wall hanging, I'll wash it. I'll use my washing machine as the wash tub, so instead of the bathtub. I'll fill it with water, but I'll do still the sort of by hand or with the plunger, the actual washing. I don't turn the cycle on so that the agitator is never going. I just use the washing machine as a wash tub, and then you can just do all the water filling and the spinning right there in the machine. So I'm going to give it a spin. So I use drying racks to dry. I have in the past put my quilts on clotheslines. I wouldn't suggest you do that on a single clothesline because it puts a lot of pressure on that one spot. But if you have a double clothesline and you can kind of float it, over both lines. If I dry outside, I put a sheet over the quilt because, birds fly over sometimes. But here I use my drying racks. You can use patio furniture and anything that, you can lay it across to let it dry. If it's something like patio furniture, I would cover those up first with a clean sheet. So you don't need drying racks, anything that's big enough that you can drape it over so that it can dry. And now take some small towels and kind of just to soften the points on the corners a little bit so my drying racks, don't poke in the corners. And just let it dry. If this seems like a lot of trouble, keep in mind that from a king size or a queen size quilt, I'm easily spending $150 on fabric, and it probably takes me, depending on the complexity, probably takes me 200 to 300 hours of work to make a quilt. So taking a little bit of extra care in the washing is going to preserve the quilt, and you're going to have it a lot longer. Like a woman from a yarn shop said to me once, handmade, hand wash. That's just a rule. You don't want to take something that's handmade and put it in commercial washers, and especially not dryers. That lint that you take out of your lint catcher is basically disintegrated fabric. And if you think about that, then you would not want to put a quilt into a dryer because it's very hard on the fabric. So, there you go.